something which was built in the colonial era by the British as a seat of government. But the Indian foreign policy establishment started working much before our independence in 1947. We already had embassies in Washington and Sri Lanka and other places, which expanded much later with our independence. So you were initially very isolated, you had supreme powers, supreme authority, and Nehru, for example, the Pandit Nehru, he was a great thinker. So on any issues, it was he who would decide. India's relations with Burma, with Myanmar. So the officers would put up long notes. This I'm talking about how the Indian foreign policy formulation took place, how it evolved after our independence. Just to give you an idea. So as an officer in the foreign ministry looking after Burma, you would ask the embassy in Burma, the ambassador in Burma, to send all his inputs. So he would send his inputs that in the economic sphere there should be our relations, in the political sphere there should be our relations, in the various spheres there should be our relations, in the cultural sphere there should be our relations with Burma. So as the officer sitting in Delhi, I would then work on that, read up a lot about the old way our relations were, and then say that our foreign policy vis-a-vis Burma should be such and such. Then the officers above would make changes to that basic document. Then it would go up to the foreign minister, which in this case was the Prime Minister also. He was the Foreign Minister of India for a long time. So he was a great thinker. So he is credited with being the father of India's foreign policy. He's called the father of India's foreign policy. Because even when I work now in the ministry and I try to search for old documents and old papers, many times I come across large handwritten notes, long handwritten notes by Nehru. So he would then say that on the basis of what has been put up to me, I feel that this is the way we should have our foreign policy with this country or with that country or with this region or that region or with the UN or with any other organization. So that is how the initial formulation of foreign policy took place, and that remained the case for a long time. And that continued as a basic premise on which a whole structure was built. So there was very little participation with the outside world other than this huge pyramidal structure, self-contained. Over time, what has happened now, today, if I see the same process at work, suddenly there is an explosion. 10 years back, 20 years back, when I would have meetings with academics, with the media, with political science students, with international relations students in different universities, with professors of the School of International Relations in different parts of the country, with think tanks, academic think tanks, professional think tanks, the inputs which they could provide was very, very limited, very small, because they didn't know the parameters, the domains very clearly. So their inputs were more traditional. Today that has changed completely. The whole civil society. So that's why your question is very relevant in the context of the globalized world today. Today for me it's much easier to discuss with an academic, the parties, for example, just a single example I will take. The India's civil nuclear deal and civil nuclear agreement with the International Atomic Energy Agency, with the Nuclear Suppliers Group, with USA and with other countries including Russia, France, etc. The same process 5 years back, 10 years back, 20 years back. Hardly anybody from the civil society would be involved in the process. From the media, some journalists would write, but there the content of their message would not be so substantive, would not be so substantial, because the inputs they would have been able to provide would be peripheral, not central to the argument. Today what happened, for the civil nuclear deal, the whole civil society got involved, the media got involved, the television got involved, the radio got involved. Every day, any ordinary Indian could write long articles, long letters. He was being interviewed on the street on an issue which is so esoteric, which was so esoteric earlier. Suddenly he was very passionate about it, either for it or against it. But he was involved mentally. And he was discussing, he was expressing an opinion which didn't exist earlier. So there is a very healthy debate now, there is a lot of transparency, there is a lot of, I would say, globalization within this context of foreign policy formulation within every country, within not every country, at least within some countries, within many countries. So if I am a student of political science in India, for me to log on, for example, even if internet is here, I can log on to the Ministry of External Affairs website of the Government of India, see about the relations between India and any other country, the speeches made by the Prime Minister, the joint statements which have been signed. So for me to put out an informed discussion or argument or paper or article, or write one of these articles in a magazine like this one, it is of much better quality now, very substantive, very informative. So there was a very healthy debate and discussion on this issue of the nuclear policy, and the government, the previous government, has come back to power again now in India after elections which were held just last month. And one of the reasons for the support that they got was the discussions on foreign policy, which are now open to a much larger public. So students of, for example, the premier institution in India, the Jawaharlal Nehru University, where I guess some of your faculty will be going in October in the School of International Sciences, SIS. Those students also are writing a lot. Then there's a lot of continuous panel discussions, interviews on the television on foreign policy issues. So foreign policy has become much more transparent, much more open, because of the web, because of the internet, because of the media, because of television, because of technology, because of everything. And on the other hand, there is also a lot of intrusion of the domestic agenda into the foreign policy agenda. The economic goals of India, the poverty issues, climate issues, which earlier would be totally bound in the domain of domestic issues, domestic policy, today infringe upon foreign policy very significantly. So if I am in the Ministry of External Affairs, today we have divisions which are called Energy Security Division. This would never have been thought of 5 years back, 10 years back. But now it's part of the foreign policy establishment. For climate change we have a lot of officers working.